Welcome back to News Insight. Rivers State never really gets out of the news lately. From one thing to the other, some rule of law, some constitutional matter. But this one is about protest. Two groups protested, one for and one against. One for the sole administrator or the suspension of Fubara, then one for against the suspension of Fubara. But one was allowed to protest and one was not allowed to protest. And the suspended governor came out and said, this is not right. Okafor.
Yeah, Rivers Women Unite for Sin were protesting in Ahoda.
Yeah.
So about 200 of them. And there's other women who are also protesting in
Port Harcourt women.
They call themselves Rivers Women for peace and good governance. And as we should have in democracy, the people protesting in Rivers State were allowed to protest peacefully. They were protesting peacefully. Unfortunately, it wasn't the same way for those protesting at Ahoada. You know, we are looking forward to a situation where an independent person who is asked to make a research on any violent protest occurrence in Nigeria would not come out and tell us that the protest was peaceful until the police got there. We don't want a situation where it will go so terrible, where an independent person will come out and say, oh, everything was going peaceful until the police, released their tear gas. We don't want a situation where those who were saddled with the responsibility to keep peace are seen to be working in the opposite direction, simply for what we don't know. I think before you say protest has become violent, the protesters must have coordinated themselves, or really not even coordinating themselves, in such a way that they have become threat or imminent threat to public peace. And until such arises, that protest should be allowed to continue. So if police presence or their involvement or their being around is now the turning point for something to not become peaceful, either against the protesters or against other citizens, I think the police institution need to review their operational metrics. And I begin to see it that police should understand basically that their interest is for the entire citizens.
For peace.
For peace. Entire citizens, not minding whose us is God. Do you understand? So, and I'm not against those who protested in favor of the sole administrator. That's the beauty of democracy. Those that protested
the right to speak freely.
So who say, because they claim that they were not favored by what Fubara was doing, that Fubara suspended the legislature, how he was practically ruling like a king, and he has over-bloated contract, and they have their points. They should be allowed to speak. They believe that the emergence of the sole administrator have restored peace. That is their belief. They should be allowed to say that. Then those other women who say, oh, bring back Fubara, bring back the elected institutions, we want democracy, this is what we want, should also be allowed to speak. And that's how we would want this nation to be balanced.
Your take?
Well, what can I say? In the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria is entrenched with freedom of right, freedom of association, freedom of speech. I think what those women were exercising is one of those freedom. One, of association. Two, of speech. Like you rightly said, there are two sides of a coin. You could choose to take any side. Those in Ahoda took the side of saying, no, we elected our officials, they should be allowed to run for their, to run the government for the tenure that we elected them for. And the one in Port Harcourt are saying that this man has breached the law, so what we have as a state of emergency is right. But again, here comes the police. What do? Do they provide a level playing ground? What is the role of the police? Is to ensure for peace and security. But the reverse is the case in Ahoda. For what we are hearing, we don't have the facts. Whether the Ahoda women were violent or they were peaceful. But on the other hand, in Port Harcourt, the report was clear. The Port Harcourt women were very peaceful. They marched and they did their things and they went home. It's yet to uncover whether in Ahoda, whether the women were peaceful or they were not peaceful. Until we have that information, we cannot really speak on it. But again, the police should come out to say what led to their action in Ahoda.
Okay, so I still want to take you on it. Continuing from there, let's dwell on what Fubara had to say about the biasness of the police, because we can say now that the one in Port Harcourt was peaceful. Why can't we get a report of the one in Ahoda peaceful? Fubara said it was peaceful and they were just being biased.
Well, Fubara, the protest in Ahoda in the first place was in support of Fubara.
Yes.
There was no way Fubara could speak against whatever that is in support of it. It's his own interest.
But we also have a report that it was not peaceful.
Yes, I said we are yet to have that to ascertain whether it was violent or it was peaceful. But again, Fubara has made this point that if the condition that they were peaceful and the police just went violent, then we will align with Fubara. But don't forget that the protest in Ahoda was for Fubara's interest. You can't speak against himself in the first place.
Okay.
That's my take.
Okay. Now we let's dwell on the character of the police. Have we seen in recent times? Anytime protest is coming, they will advise the people against the protest.
Yeah.
In fact, the end bad governance protest that happened, they recruited even traditional rulers to speak against the protest. Why the protest has not even happened?
Okay, let me put this on record before I move forward. When we leave this table, go and make a research. During that end bad governance protest that was botched and eventually quenched, Fubara came out in support of the protesters. I think he was about the only governor that went to the protest ground.
Yes.
And you understand me? That went to the protest ground, guaranteeing the people's right to protest. And admonishing them to be peaceful.
And their passage.
We still have the video. He's the only governor I'm aware of.
Yes.
I'm not aware of any other governor that did it.
Yes.
You understand? He came out on the protest ground. So you see, on a short-sighted level, or probably when you put it on a fractional scale, you can say the women in Ahoda are protesting for Fubara's interest. I think they are protesting for the interest of democracy.
Thank you.
Because a lot of us who have said, Fubara has done one or two things. We said it here many times, that both Fubara and the State House have taken actions that are not the best.
For the people.
Just for
democracy.
Not even for democracy, just for them to survive. But those actions were not right. Even while we do not credit the action of demolition of this thing to Fubara directly, we had said so that if Fubara did that, it was too much. It was overstretched to destroy properties that belong to the government simply to save your seat. That was wrong. And also not accepting to restore status quo while the case was in court. These legislators were elected legislators before problem. So when there is the case in court, the status quo should have maintained. The status quo is that they were legislators. You can't maintain your seat and suspend other legislators. You understand? They could remain as legislators while the case was on. You understand? So
I also spoke on the other side of what some of the legislators did that were not right.
He also spoke on what the legislators were playing, raising, going to, like, you now call police. I have armed robber in my house.
Yes.
Suddenly police now arrive and say, yeah, sorry, I was joking, there's armed robber. How can legislators go to court? Go to television and announce defection and all that, and you come back, write sue affidavit, send to court, and bring back again that you didn't sue again. All that survival mode. And that is why we recommended that issues of River State needed a political solution. Sit on a round table, discuss it, and ask everybody, okay, go home, sin no more, and they continue. Do you understand? That none of them had risen to emergency rule. And I think that those protesting that said they do not want emergency rule, like many Nigerians speaking against the emergency rule, are not speaking for Fubara's interest. The 11 governors that went to Supreme Court for proper interpretation of Section 305 on all other sessions concerns the removal of governor in office and as well as emergency are not speaking. As a matter of fact, their first prayer clearly stated in 36 states of the Federation, they are speaking for democracy. Do you understand?
Yeah.
But Sending, like you said, you asked, sending the letter or information to the police that we're going to protest, where you can't remove peace from the police to say we allow this or we don't allow this or we think this might become violent, so we want you to confine yourself to a certain place. You know, there must be rule. There must be rule. There's no doubt about that.
Now, in going forward, Fubara has said this: let the right for people to talk be not only on support for a particular cause, but for I don't think, I normally say I don't think that there's enough reason. There's a tag that came up in 1993 when the military, was it 93 or 98? It was never again. That never again.
No, it was the Jonathan's time when we lost.
No, during the military time.
The military repeated under Jonathan when they won, when they were able to clear Borno State for election.
Okay. Never again. But this one was when the military exited during that Abacha's period and Obasanjo came in. They said there was I can remember very well in Lagos. They said never again. Do you think, in rounding up, that there is any reason good enough for the military to enter the political space of Nigeria?
Not at all. You see what has happened in Rivers State is unfortunate. It's not acceptable, but it has happened. You see, we have always said that the only thing we need in Africa is good governance. We haven't got it. Because you can't appropriate and appropriate at the same time. We can't have a democracy in Nigeria and have military administration in Rivers State. Nobody's accepting that. And I've said it here that, look, everybody has the right to protest and associate. And he has alluded to the fact that even in the Western world, for you to protest, you need to write to the police that you want to protest, and they had to okay it. So there are rules and regulations. That's what I meant to say that, look, we haven't had what actually transpired in Ahoda. But if they follow all the laid down rules, what the police did, it is wrong. And I align myself with Fubara. And don't forget, I said, whether you like it or not, whether you say they are protesting for the Nigeria, whatever, Fubara's name is mentioned. So whatever thing he says will be
Lucas bias.
Exactly. That's my point.
Okay. Okafor, I just want to wait on what I just asked.
Yeah.
Is there any good reason enough for us to have a military rule in any political solution for political issues?
You see, if military was good enough, we didn't need to send them packing. Because let me put it so. Yeah. You see, I keep telling people, when they are building that little bridges, they are just doing little roads, they are paving, little street lights they are managing to do. They say, oh, come, these are dividends of democracy. Those are not dividends of democracy. China, there's no democracy in China. Yeah. They have one of the best bridges.
Yes.
There's no democracy in China. They have one of the best rules. Dividend of democracy is freedom of speech, like he has said, freedom of association. Do you understand? Ability to do all this, disagree and agree, and settle it without military. We had military that even, Peter P said during the IBB's book launch that we were better off during the military. Everybody wanted to kill him.
But it's true.
That's true. But it is true. So if we wanted any fraction of the military, we didn't need to truncate them with so much expenses, with so much money being voted for INEC.
Blood was shed.
For INEC to print beavers that will not use to do all that. Abiola died. All just for military to go, and we're bringing them back.
But with red carpet.
Yeah, with red carpet. We don't need them. They don't have a space in our democracy.
The space is within the Nigerian sovereignty.
Just to borders, ensure that we are one. That's all.
Yes. Well, that's what we will take away. The military should stay in their duty, their constitutional role, not in governance of the nation. We'll be right back on News Insight.